Good afternoon, Patriots, and welcome to the 73rd audio chat in the Q News Patriot Rumble channel series. I'm the Q News Patriot, joined today by January 6th filmmaker and just an incredible Patriot warrior, Chris Burgard. I'm SG Anon. Over the period from January the 6th of 2021 to the present day, our movement and indeed our entire great United States has been heavily drummed with psychological warfare of a military grade and a military intelligence flavor. Many awakened patriots out there have been researching these things, coming around to the realizations of large-scale consciousness ops like MK Ultra, Mockingbird, Monarch, and others. And one of those operations that we saw on full display was the fedsurrection of January the 6th of 2021. A lot of patriots out there have spent a great deal of time researching these events and compiling and aggregating the data, the connections, the important points to highlight about what happened that day. And Chris is one of those that I think is representative of the very cream of the crop with that group. It's an honor to have him on. Mr. Burgard, thank you for joining me.
Well, I'm blessed to be here. Thank you very much, sir. Honored.
Well, I have to admit, we had initially scheduled our talk for yesterday, and you asked me a question about the most recent movie that you all have made, The War on Truth, and that's going to be one of our main discussions today. It helps to highlight what actually occurred on January the 6th, and it's just a phenomenal aggregation of research in a very digestible manner. And after having seen the film, I have to admit my heart was deeply moved, and the entire flavor of the conversation that I wanted to have initially has changed. With your blessing, I'd like to actually open our talk today for the audience and show the teaser trailer that you all have put together for the movie. Give me just a moment. All right, here we go.
You are suggesting that the violence at the Capitol on January 6th was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources or FBI agents. The answer is no, it was not.
I know that everyone here will soon be marching over to the Capitol building to peacefully and patriotically make your voices heard.
It's not protest, it's insurrection.
When I said how many agents or assets of the government were present on January 5th and January 6th and agitating in the crowd to go into the Capitol and how many went into the Capitol, can you answer that now?
I don't know the answer to that question.
You don't know how many there were or there were none?
I don't know the answer to either of those questions.
I think you may have just perjured yourself that you don't know that there were any.
Smoke pops, and when F starts to leave, he's got 4 people in front of him and 4 people behind him, and they literally get him the hell out of there.
Based on your investigation so far, do you have any evidence that the Capitol attack was organized by, quote, fake Trump protesters?
We have not seen evidence of that.
We need to go into the Capitol! I was in the front. I also orchestrated it.
Unbelievably powerful and a fantastic setup for the discussion today. Chris, I just have to ask, you and I have been trying to get connected regarding some film projects that have been in the works for a while, and this ended up being the one to broach that bridge finally and cross it over for us completely. And I just have to admit, I'm fundamentally floored at the quality of the film. But first, I have to ask for the audience out there, how did you get into the filmmaking component of this? Where did Chris Burgard come into the Great Awakening and the Patriot Warrior fold?
Oh, my Lord. It was a baptism of fire. It's funny how God trains us for a time such as this. Back in 2005, I was just a regular Hollywood guy. I made my living doing stunts. I was on a sitcom, Growing Pains, another TV show called Tour Duty, did a bunch of features. And I had gone from acting to directing. I directed a horror movie that it got an occult status, but never hit the A-list. And well, my wife is saying, well, what are you going to do next? I had been working with some fellas building ranch fences that were here illegally from Mexico. And they told me what it was like and how life had changed in their village when the cartels took over, that you either worked for the cartels or you didn't work, and it wasn't safe to have their women, their wives and their daughters running around because the cartels could rape them and there would be no no legal way to get redress on that. And then if they came over the border, that the cartels would give you a load of drugs to carry and put a gun to your head and say, you're going to carry this or we're going to shoot you and leave you in the desert. So that was in 2005 when the whole Minuteman movement was starting up. And of course, the media made these guys out to be a bunch of crazy vigilantes. And I decided to go down and look and see for myself. And I'd never made a documentary before. Ended up taking 2 years to make that documentary. I was embedded with local law enforcement, with the Border Patrol, with in the Minutemen. I had the leader of the Minutemen for a month, traveled with us up and down the border for the whole month of October. And then I kept doing operations down there with local law enforcement and ranchers that I still continue to have relationships with to this day. So when Border came out, it got me blacklisted in Hollywood. We'd made a movie that I thought, hey, everybody's going to get behind this. When we did the test screenings, you had people on the left and people on the right were out in the parking lots an hour and a half after the screening ended talking about how this was so wrong and things we needed to change. And I thought, man, this is going to be awesome. And then I found out the way the world really works. That was not the message that the deep state wanted. And back then we didn't know it was the deep state. We just thought it was the people that financed Hollywood. Deep state didn't want that message out. And they tried to destroy us. They tried, my wife and I, they called us racists, nativists, xenophobes. I had to look that one up. I didn't know what that meant at the time. But that put me on this path of showing the truth. Just take cameras down there, just show what's happened, let the people tell their stories, and then let America make up their mind. And that movie went on to screen for both houses of Congress and was used as a grassroots tool to help block the 2007 Bush amnesty program that he was going to put out. So that led into a whole career. And I got blacklisted, by the way, for doing that movie. I didn't work in Hollywood for almost 3 years. And when I did go back to work, it was for a guy named Herman Cain as his strategic media director. I did his messaging. We did his all his branding, his commercials. And it was just such an experience because here's an amazing man that could really have fixed the country, and they had to take him out. And that's when and it's interesting, when you're sitting backstage at the presidential debates with a camera and a cowboy hat, people just think you're stupid, so they talk. And man, when you're back in these things and you hear these billionaires and people talking about who's going to be the next president in these meetings, it really opens up your eyes to how the whole process really works. Anyway, I digress. So if you don't like the message, destroy the messenger. My career went into the world of doing not just political stuff, commercials and stuff to pay the bills and try to get good people into Congress and the Senate. And we were successful doing that. But God just kept putting me in these places of truth, like on the border. A few years later, I found myself in Central America when they tried to do a coup in Honduras, which woke me up to what happened on January 6th. We weren't planning on going to January 6th till about 2 days beforehand. I just had this tugging on my heart that we needed to go. And I called Nick, and Nick was busy. Nick Searcy, he's my partner in this movie and in the last one. And we ended up there on January 6th, and it started out as just the most wonderful day. It was just so happy, so nice. Remember, this is COVID. Nobody was wearing masks. It was crowded. There may have been up to 2 million people. That's a number that General Flynn and I both feel is pretty close to accurate. But it was so crowded. If I didn't have my camera up above my head in some places to film, I couldn't get my camera up. But I was running into friends that I hadn't seen in years there. It was amazing. It's just an amazing day. Except that the one thing that was different was it wasn't just the biggest protest I've ever been to. The smell of pot was pretty prevalent. And then what we later figured out was the people that were smoking the pot, most of those guys were the infiltrators for Antifa and BLM that came in. But that day, Trump was an hour late coming in, and then he spoke. It was cold, it was rainy, and then he started to repeat his speech. And we're like, what's going on? Why is this taking so long? And in hindsight, we realized that if he wouldn't have done that, the timing, because the breach happened, and all these White House photographers and journalists were already pre-positioned, not covering Trump. They were up at the Capitol building. And so if he wouldn't have gone so long, you would have had this whole swarm of people hitting the Capitol when the first breach actually happened, which the fact that he held everything up makes
a strategic maneuver.
Exactly. And so for me, where we get done, I'm one of the last people to go because I was filming and interviewing some people after Trump got done speaking. But it's interesting, the movie opens up with, and this is why you need to show people. The movie opens up with, everybody's singing and dancing and doing the YMCA after the president got done speaking. And people see that, and some people on the left, they see that and they go, how'd you make it look like everybody was dancing to the YMCA after Trump was done speaking? I was like, because everybody was dancing to the YMCA. They were like, well, wait, no, for 3.5 years, they told me they were marching, to storm the castle. And I was like, no, that's not how it happened, but you show them. So I was at the end, the tail pretty much of the movement going up to the Capitol building. It's about a mile walk from the ellipse to the Capitol. And I'm interviewing people along the way. We're having a great time filming things, talking to folks. And we didn't think we were going to make a movie at this time. We just wanted to capture that day in history. That's all God told me to do. Just get it on camera, capture this day in history. So as we're going back, we're about, halfway, 3/4 of the Capitol building. I look at my wife and I said, this doesn't feel right. And she said, what do you mean? I said, look around you. There's almost no police presence around us. 2, there's no film crews. Usually you're tripping over CNN or Fox. It's like the liberal media is trying to get you to trip up. They're looking for those gotcha moments. The conservative media is here interviewing people. There's nobody going on. This bothers me and concerns me that whatever images they want going out to record this day in history, it's not the peaceful people, the tailgate party you see happening right here with people praying and singing. And that concerns me. Just as I told her that, the phone rang. It was my partner, Nick Searcy, who was already up at the Capitol building. And he said, and this was a God thing because cell phones weren't working that day, but Nick's call came through. And Nick says, I just watched the Capitol Police move the bike racks. They're funneling people into the Capitol building. And I just got a pit in my stomach. And I turned to my wife and I said, honey, someone's going to die today. And a couple hours later, we had 4 dead Trump supporters, and including Ashley Babbitt. And the rest is history. And when that day went down and the narrative came out, it just wasn't sitting right. And Nick and I had the opportunity to make a movie about this, and we just wanted to sit down and capture that day in history. So we made the movie Capital Punishment, which was the most censored movie of 2022. But it captured that day, so it wouldn't allow the left to steal that day in history. As a result of Capital Punishment, I was doing a movie on the border, a second movie on the border with Tom Homan, Trump's ICE director, because I'm tired of picking up dead bodies here in Texas, and my friend's ranch is just being overloaded. So we made this other movie about the border, and while I'm doing that movie, FBI comes a quarter mile into my ranch and informs me that I'm under investigation as a terrorist threat to the United States of America for making capital punishment. And I'm a 62-year-old award-winning filmmaker. I've worked with law enforcement on and off the border for the last 20 years. I come from a law enforcement family. My father actually graduated from the 109th session of the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia. So I was a little surprised when this happened. And, initially I was like, okay,
the
yeah,
irony.
The irony, yeah. So initially I said, okay, well, I'll talk to you fellas, but I want to have my attorneys present because we had attorneys standing by in case something like this happened. Because while we're making these movies, people we know and working with are getting arrested. And so they said, okay, and I got my team in contact with them. And then the FBI called me up, and when they did this, they didn't tell my county sheriff that they were investigating somebody in his county, which in law enforcement, that's kind of an FU. You're basically saying to the sheriff, we don't trust you enough to hold this information, and so we're just going to bypass you and go after one of your citizens. So when my sheriff here in our county said, you put up a bunch of no trespassing signs at every entrance to your ranch, and if they come back again, I'm going to treat them like any other trespasser. So while we're getting all this stuff worked out with the attorneys, I don't want to leave my county. So I get this phone call from the FBI, a second phone call saying, hey, we're just down the road, just down the freeway. Come on down there. We'll take you into the DPS CID Criminal Investigation Division where we can film everything so nothing's taken out of context, just like you wanted. And it's just a 5-minute meeting. We just have a quick conversation. We just have 3 quick questions for you, and we'll be done. And I worked with a guy named General Michael Flynn, and I saw what they did to him. And I said to these guys, I said, why didn't you go to my attorneys? Oh, we didn't want to bother them. This is just a quick thing, just whatever. And I said, you know what, guys, I offered you professional courtesy. This just isn't cool. Just talk to my attorneys. I'm not talking to you anymore. And, I said, I know Mike Flynn. I saw what you did to Mike Flynn, and I'm not going to be Flynned. I just don't want to do that. So after about 5-6 weeks of working that and getting that to settle down a little bit, they haven't said the investigation is closed. But it was stressful on me. It's stressful on my family. When your daughter looks at you and she says, Dad, do I need to keep the dogs in my room tonight? Because I don't want the FBI to shoot my dogs. Are they coming tomorrow? Do you think they're coming tomorrow? To see that kind of fear and not be able to take that away from the women in your life, the family you're supposed to be protecting, to be protecting your family from your own government is just, it's not a pleasant place to be in. But so after we got that calmed down a bit, some other things happened. People had asked us about making a sequel, but until that happened for me as a director, I didn't know what the movie was going to be. But as Nick said, well, hell, if they're doing this to you, what are they doing to the other people out there that we haven't followed up on? And so the answer was, when you see the movie, what I went through in my family, the pressure that was on us, uncomfortable and stressful as that may be, was nothing compared to what's happening out there to the J6ers. The level of persecution that we're seeing that's going on is just unprecedented in the history of our country. So that's why we had to tell these stories. So we set out just to tell the stories of the people that were being persecuted, to tell the stories of the folks we found out were actually combat war heroes, veterans, special forces guys that were imprisoned over 2 years waiting for their trials. And along the way, we added in a little bit more of why January 6th happened, how long January 6th was, there was months, if not years in the making, how the Ukraine was a dress rehearsal for J6, what they did in 2014 when they took over the Ukrainian government, and, just tried to open that window a little bit for people to see the bigger picture of what's going on. And that's how we made The War on Truth. It came out May 17th, and I thought I knew something about censorship. But after seeing what they've done in the last 2 months to us and supporters of the film, we must be really over the target, because they are pulling out all the stops to make sure America doesn't see this movie.
Our first indication that it should be the very first thing on our viewing list. And I would consider it among some of the better films that I've personally ever witnessed, being produced and being shared with the public. Chris, with your permission, I'd like to give just a small other segment of the movie that was not included on the teaser trailer. We discussed it a little bit prior to.
I would love that. And to back up going into this, movies I've made are used in schools and universities as teaching tools to capture the historical moments. So yeah, it's kind of funny how I've gone from my stuff being used for educational purpose. Now it's deemed an enemy of the state. Let's take a look at what you pulled up here.
Indeed.
Thank you, sir.
So this is U.S. Representative Troy Niels, representative from Texas, District 22. We're going to start here and go for roughly 90 seconds to 100 seconds or so, but it helps to sort of encapsulate the flavor of what you were talking about with the persecution and the attitude towards the J6ers, being a complete contrivement. Allow me just a moment here for the audience.
Don't forget to hit the mute button. There you go.
She was the assistant chief. She was the one that oversaw the intelligence section of the Capitol Police on January 6th. January 6th, Nick, should have never happened. This is the intelligence, the IICD, which is the intelligence section. This is the overall analysis. I highlight some of the areas, but I'm going to say this. Supporters of the current president see January 6, 2021 as the last opportunity to overturn the results of the presidential election. This is the most shocking. Congress itself is the target on the 6th. They knew the Capitol building was the target. Now, I would be a rookie police officer if I would have read that paragraph, Nick. I would have said, hey, boys, we got a problem. We need the National Guard here on January 4th. Why weren't the National Guard deployed on our nation's capital on January 4th? The intelligence, the leadership, Uganda Pittman, didn't share this with anybody.
We were blindsided. Intelligence failed operations. the January 6th attack at the Capitol was preventable. If the intelligence had been accurately reported and the FBI and DHS had followed their policies and established practices, I wouldn't be sitting here today.
Every military guy I know, every three-letter guy I know that was at January 6th, we all saw the same things happening. We all knew that this was an operation.
Something caught my eye, and so I stopped it and I rewound, and as soon as I pushed play, I saw something else. If you watch the footage on top of the Capitol, and if you fast forward it and watch it, you really do see movement of individuals. You just see them moving through the crowd. The red smoke pops, and when Epps starts to leave, he's got 4 people in front of him and 4 people behind him, and they literally get him the hell out of there. They go behind the media and then just disappear. They said he was there by himself, or with his nephew also. They got separated. You know, if he was there by himself, then why are 4 guys leading him out and 4 guys following? It's plain to see, it's obvious.
You see a red smoke flare go off. This Special Forces individual, instantly when he saw the red flare, well, that's an avalanche. So what's an avalanche flare? He said that means get out. He said based on the timing of the flare and the automatic response of those 9 individuals immediately evacuating from their position up at the front, he said that was planned and coordinated.
Tomorrow, we need to go into the Capitol. Into the Capitol.
So he says, hey, Dan, I see you got a new...
That very short segment helps to paint the full picture of what has been done to our great republic of these United States, and more than 1,000, as I understand it, individuals that have been identified for some sort of persecution, prosecution, or harassment by our illegitimate federal agencies. You know, that leads me into my next question about all of this, Chris. You know, you've done a tremendous amount of research into this topic. Clearly, the film itself screens at about 2 hours, is my understanding. It's just jam-packed with incredible information and context. What is the important takeaway when we consider the landscape here of what occurred that day? We have the dimensionality with Trump. We have the dimensionality with the Capitol building, the breach, the obvious orchestration in some sort of an operational format. What is an important takeaway from this movie?
Well, the biggest takeaway is that this is an effort to steal the government, which worked, to persecute American people so that they never stand up for themselves again, and to implement to take down the republic and bring in a totalitarian state. You want to look at the bigger picture of what you just saw. Troy Nell's in there. He's an outstanding congressman here out of Texas from the Houston area. Troy was a military guy, and then he was a law dog. He was a sheriff before he went to Congress. This is the state we're living in right now. When he started investigating into J6 and trying to get to the bottom of everything that's going on, under Nancy Pelosi's watch, Capitol Police Intelligence Division broke into his office, his congressional office. They came in over a Thanksgiving weekend. They thought no one was there. Troy happened to have a staffer that didn't go home for Thanksgiving. He was in there working, and he caught him. And these guys were in there disguised as construction workers, and they were filming and taking pictures of everything they could inside Troy's office. And if you ask Troy, why were they doing that? He's like, he believes they were looking for blackmail material to try to get him to shut up. That's the current state of affairs in Washington, D.C. right now. Now, normally, Watergate activity like that would be all over the media. It would be a big, be a big thing. It would be a crisis. Everyone would be all over this. You don't see that happening. That tells you that the deep state is owning the media and is owning the legal system. We have, this goes so deep. I mean, and yeah, I don't usually agree with Senator Chuck Schumer, but when he said that, you don't mess with the intelligence agencies, they've got 9 ways a Sunday to get back over you. He wasn't kidding, but that's what we're looking at now. I mean, we have done this to governments across the country or across the planet when we wanted to switch regimes, and now it was just done here in the United States of America. Oh, and I'm sorry, one other thing. As Matthew Graves says in here, the DOJ, the 1,000 people they've gone after, the 430 some people they've already put in prison, they're just getting started. I naively thought when we started this movie, well, it's old news. Everybody knows that J6 was a setup and they'll lay off now. Oh no, they doubled down. And as you see in the movie, there's an FBI whistleblower, former special agent Steve Friend. They took him off of a pedophile task force. They took him off a pedophile task force to go after J6ers. And in his career, he came to believe that the FBI was making a registry of Christians. And he actually, when he found that out, he told his wife, I think our time here is limited. We should start saving our money. And a year later, he was out. The very fabric of what the United States of America is what they're going after. In the first movie, you had a guy like Derek Kinnison, who's in prison right now, never went inside the Capitol building, but they've got him, they convicted him for something for being part of a Telegram chat channel. And when they raided his house in California, they pulled out he had a box of pocket constitutions that he'd hand out when he goes out and meets people and speaks. They pulled that out and laid out the constitutions when they raided his house and filmed it like it was 10 kilos of cocaine, because that's what they're defining as extremism. That the people that believe in God, the people that believe in the Constitution, are now the greatest threat to the security of the country. That's what they're running with. That's who the FBI is targeting. And at the same time, the FBI just got a whole bunch of money from Congress to make a new facility that's going to be bigger than the Pentagon. They're turning everything into surveillance. They used to protect us from people attacking our country. Now it's going towards civilians of our own citizens. And when they put a task force together to go after more J6ers, like Matthew Graves said, anybody that was in that restricted area is fair game to go after. Well, what was the restricted area? Was it a full mile around the Capitol? Was it, a quarter mile where they had no trespassing signs and snow fences that were pulled down? And while law enforcement just watched them do that, so that when the million people got up to the Capitol, they had no idea they were in a restricted space. I've been filming for 30 years at the Capitol. I've never been restricted to go in that space. So what they're doing now is setting the template, the precedent to turn this country complete upside down, to fundamentally transform the United States of America. The name of the film, The War on Truth, that came from a question that Nick asked Pastor Rob McCoy, because the first whole flood of people we were interviewing are all hardcore Christians. And he asked him, is this a war on Christians? Is this a war on Christianity? And Rob's answer was yes and no. It's a war on truth. And as Christians, we're called to stand up and speak the truth. So therefore, that just gets us in the way and makes us the targets. And that's what we're seeing. When we started first interviewing people that were in prison, two fellows come to mind. One that's in the movie, Colt Maccabee, that you see, who was a Tennessee sheriff's deputy and held in prison for 2 years before his trial came up. And the reason he believes he was held in prison that long is because he was an expert witness to the death of Roseanne Boylan, and how it was the actions of the police that day that he believes caused her death. And the other fellow was a guy named Master Sergeant Jeremy Brown, who had run for Congress in Florida. And Jeremy had also been the poster soldier for the Green Berets. He was 20 years Special Forces. And I asked Jeremy, I said, why are you in prison for 2 years awaiting trial? He said, the United States government spent millions of dollars teaching me how to take down a country from the inside and conduct these kind of operations. If I wasn't in prison right now, I would be on every podcast, every news show, talking to every journalist I could, explaining what happened on January 6th and what's going to come next, because this is what I was trained to do. So that's pretty frightening. And that's the state of where we are. And that's what America needs to understand. J6 was just one battle in a much larger war against the United States of America.
The overthrow of our great Constitution. I don't think that's an exaggerated phrase, certainly publicly and certainly for the world to appreciate for the history books. Chris, go ahead. I'm sorry.
The media backs it up. It was about a month or two ago. and I may be wrong, so please don't quote me. I think it was NBC or MSNBC, and I believe she was a producer from Politico, I think, but I may be mistaken. But basically, the question was, why are Christian nationalists such a threat to the security of the United States of America? And her answer was, well, you have to understand, these people don't believe that their rights come from the government. They actually believe that their rights come from God. And yeah, that's what's in the Constitution. That's how this country was founded. But what's that showing you is this is how far they're brainwashing. This is where they're going with this. And they thought they were already there, that they were comfortable enough to put an operative out there and say that, if people believe that their rights come from God as stated in the Constitution, they're the enemy, they're the bad guys. That's going on mainstream media. That shows you how far they're going to transform the United States of America. When Barack Obama said that he was going to fundamentally transform the United States of America, this is what he meant. Under his administration, Janet Napolitano, then the director of DHS, put out Fusion Report. And Fusion Report is basically a white paper strategy for how the federal government liaisons and coordinates with state and local law enforcement. And in this Fusion Report from 40,000-foot view, she laid, remember, this is while we're fighting in Iraq, Afghanistan, we're worried about Al-Qaeda, ISIS, we've got, Fort Hood massacre, all this stuff is going on. This Fusion Report stated the three most dangerous threats to the United States of America were pro-secure border enthusiasts, Christian pro-lifers, and returning veterans. And you're thinking, I spent years on the border. I mean, they tried to make us look like vigilantes. It didn't happen. I've marched for life in DC. I've never seen anybody bring a knife, let alone a gun to that thing. And, veterans, yeah, some guys come back pretty shook up, but there's treatment out there for PTSD. So at the time, it didn't make sense. But when we started making this movie and we started interviewing people that are in jail, people that are in prison, people that are in jail for misdemeanors, people in prison waiting for their trials, who are we running into? Running into people that are pro-secure border enthusiasts, Christian pro-lifers, and returning veterans. So you take these folks, which should be the best in America, pushing for biblical principles, pushing for constitutional rights, and you turn them the enemy, you're actually fundamentally transforming the United States of America. And J6 was the excuse to be able to do that, and for folks to sit back and go, oh, they're bloody insurrectionists, it must be okay. Not unlike Nazi Germany. Well, they're taking people away and we don't know what's happening to them, but they're those folks, they're Jews. Government must have a reason to do it. That's how you dehumanize the enemy of the state and you go after them. And it's pretty frightening, but it's actually happening, and it's happening in real time as we sit here.
Chris, I'm just fundamentally, again, I'm so glad that you've made this film. Where can Patriots go to find it and learn more? And then piggybacking off of that question, what do you believe Patriots should be doing to get involved in the fight?
Well, right now, it's about standing truth. I believe we need to get to a tipping point of truth. I firmly believe they tried to drive us to civil war and violence for the last, especially the last 3 years. We need to avoid that. How we peacefully save the country is by getting a tipping point of truth. You have to show people what's really happening. If I would have been able to get this movie on television, if I would have had it in the theaters, millions of people would know the truth and the country would be heading in a different direction. Right now, what we have is brave guys like you putting us on your platforms. If folks can watch the movie and then pay it forward, get it to your family, get it to your friends, get copies to your congressmen, to your senators. And if you have a friend that you love that's a liberal or far on the left and is the biggest Joe Biden fan in the world, please sit down with them. Say, just give me 2 hours and 3 minutes and watch this movie. Because what we've seen over and over, when people on the left are shown what the truth is, the scales drop from their eyes. In the first movie, some of the liberals that watched the film didn't cry when Ashley Babbitt died, but they cried when her dog died. And then that just opens them up, and they're like, oh my gosh, if they've been lying to me about something as big as J6, what else have they been lying to us about? Same thing the second movie with the YMCA dancing. If you show people the truth, it resonates. And SG, I believe that if this country stands in the light of truth, God's going to lift her up. God's going to bring us together. And the American people, it's in our DNA to resonate towards truth and to do the right thing. Look at what just happened with this attempted assassination with President Trump. Shots rang out. A man's brains got blown all over his family. 2 other guys got hurt. I mean, that's a panic situation if ever you saw one. What did that crowd do when the shots were still going on? And they got up, they ducked down, they got up, and then they were worried about their president, and they looked around to see where the shooter was coming from. I didn't see anybody running over people to get out of those stands. That's an incredible testament to the DNA and the fortitude that when put in a crisis situation, this is how the American people respond. And I think that the deep state and the enemies of this country that have worked so hard in their strategies to take America down, either underestimate that quality or they don't understand how God works with people of faith and why we're here. God started this country. It was born out of the pulpits. It was forged by people that believed that resistance to tyranny was obedience to God. And they've done everything they can to dilute that, to change our character, to hit his images through media, through the universities, through our educational system. But they haven't been able to extinguish that. I firmly believe that if enough people see this film, and there's some other good stuff out there too that folks are doing, Laura Logan, Dave Sumrall, if people can just see the truth, it will fundamentally change the direction of this country. It'll save the union, because the American people, we're supposed to run this government. This is a bottom-up republic. And in the last 100 years, it's been made to be an elite down. And we need to fix that. We need to get power back in the hands of the people. But the people can't be powerful if they don't have the truth. So that's my long-winded answer to your very short question. I'm sorry if I'm bloviating, sir.
Not a problem at all. Where can Patriots go to see the film or support the film if they so choose? And how can they get in touch?
Go to hisglory.tv, hisglory.tv. I'm a pretty easy guy to get a hold of. I'm on Facebook. You can reach me also through His Glory. I'm the CSO there, the Chief Strategic Officer. And just if you want to stand up, the war is here. It's honest. And if you want to help fight it, you want to be a warrior, help us spread the truth. And what we should do, SG, if you ever have more time, what we should go into is another segment, the whole 5th generation war that's being waged on America right now. That's a whole other subject. And like I said, January 6th was just one battle in that larger war.
Indeed. And I think projects such as this film are our answer and our response in a similar warfare fashion. At the end, Patriots win. God wins, and we will win this culture war. For folks out there, I hope you very much enjoyed our conversation today. I've been absolutely heartily encouraged and educated through the film. Again, you can navigate to hisglory.tv to learn more. Mr. Burgard, thank you very much for joining me today. I'll be back with all of you again soon on the Q News Patriot. Thanks, everyone. God bless.
God bless.